Well, look, it's not a crime to meet with a Russian or a Russian government official or a Russian lawyer connected to the government. It's
even
just
when they're
not.
Self-describing themselves.
Doesn't matter. It's not a crime to meet with you. Remember the Democratic senators who it turned out was meeting with government officials, Sergei Kislyak and others. So, look, both sides often meet with government officials. Not a crime. Let's not get hysterical.
All right, so that alone wouldn't do it. It wouldn't
No.
even hint of collusion at this point to you.
Collusion is not a crime in a political campaign. It's a crime in antitrust law for price fixing and anti-competitive behavior, period. Now,
what does that mean, what you just said?
Well, I mean, if you price fix two businesses, that's a crime.
That
you
part
can
I
go to
know
jail.
because you're in my turf here.
Right, there you go.
The other part is you're saying that
collusion's
it wouldn't be...
not a crime in a political... You can't collude
but if
with a
Russian
foreign government.
entity is telling you with she says, no ties to the Kremlin, but others are saying possible ties to the Kremlin, that they have dirt on the Democratic nominee for President of the United States, what part would give Gregg Jarrett pause?
All right, there are a couple of statutes to consider. One is conspiring to defraud the government or a government function. That would be, for example, an election. But that requires deceit, and there's no evidence of deceit here. An exchange of information is not deceitful. So that statute doesn't apply.
So you're going there knowing full well you're trying to get dirt on someone. They're telling you they have dirt on someone.
Right. I mean, you can receive all kinds of information from various sources as long as you're honest about it and disseminate that information.
But you're a
It's
great
not
lawyer, and a great person, by the way.
Thank you.
But it sets me up for this question.
Right.
Would you, getting an invite like that, go?
No, because I'm a lawyer and
that leave the lawyer out of it.
Right. Because I've covered campaigns since Ronald Reagan in 1980, and I know how it might look, and it's bad optics. Donald Trump...
But if you could get the information from somebody else who wasn't from Russia.
Yeah, I'd probably examine the evidence.
I admire that, Jarrett.
And of course, isn't that what political campaigns are about? Positive and negative information.
I asked the question.
Full disclosure.
All right, so I'm kidding. So where does this go? I mean, I think you're right. Other lawyers have kind of confirmed the approach you're taking. That there's a lot to prove there. But it does, when you have a client who has said never had a meeting with a Russian, don't recall ever meeting with a Russian, lo and behold, we discover, well, I did have a meeting with one. Furthermore, I set up that meeting.
Right.
You know how it feeds this investigatory zeal, right?
I would tell my client to be honest.
Really?
Sunshine is the best disinfectant, especially if you have an innocent client and has nothing to hide.
But you know what happens once we get word of this.
Look,
then people are going to ask, were there other meetings? Were there others involved?
Trump Jr. is doing exactly what I would tell him to do if he had nothing to hide. Get out
Should he have
front
done
of
this
it.
earlier? If he knew about it. It's possible, you had a lot of meetings. Remember the ones with the Russians.
Earlier is always better. I can't explain for him why he didn't disseminate the information earlier. Now he's going to be on Hannity.
And he was with powerful people in the campaign. Manafort was running it. Kushner there, so he had company.
Well, Kushner's a neophyte when it comes to a political campaign. So is Donald Trump Jr. So is Donald Trump. Never held public office.
Now, it happened at the Trump Tower, this meeting, right?
So what? Doesn't matter if it happens at Neil Cavuto's house.
Well, you're being very defensive. It's funny, usually. So it happened there.
Right.
Donald Trump was there. Wouldn't it beg the issue that maybe the president-elect, no, he wasn't president, he was just the Republican nominee, I'm sorry. If he stopped by and said anything to this woman, whoever else was with her, would that raise eyebrows?
Sure it would, but I don't think it happened.
But if it did, would that be a big deal?
Yeah, it probably would be a big deal. The presidential candidate himself, and especially given his statements.
They can't help not meeting each other, right? I mean, they would pass. It's not that big an office.
Well, first of all, he was, as I understand it that day, doing a fundraiser for a lunch, and whether he was at the Trump Tower simultaneous with the meeting, we just don't know. I don't spend a lot of time at Trump Tower, but it's a pretty big place.
I have no idea. Starbucks there is even more expensive than Starbucks in other locations.
Well, they charge you at Starbucks twice as much as everybody else.
They do. They don't like Italians. Do you get a sense, Greg, I mean, kidding notwithstanding here, that there's a drip, drip, drip nature to this? One of the things I focused on at the outset of this was how it hit the markets, just on the notion that this is going to be a big distraction for an agenda these guys want to see happen. You know how these things legally take on a life of their own, whether they're legal or not. What happens?
Well, look, it hurts his agenda because it distracts. And what the president needs to be doing is utilizing the bully pulpit to get out there and promote healthcare reform and tax reform and to push the things that Americans voted for him. And, you know, he's not doing that because, you know, there's this distraction. But look, they can turn a corner on this. And Donald Trump Jr., if he appears on Fox News and explains what happened, if he appears before the Senate Intelligence Committee, which he says he's willing to do, and explains what happened.
Here's what gives me pause, and you're a great lawyer, far smarter than I on this stuff. I'm saying if you said you never talked to someone, and now all of a sudden I discover you talked to someone, and I know I'm going to hear from the Trump people, Trump, you're always a globalist. You know, I never knew what a globalist was. Apparently I am. But at first I thought they were talking about my waistline, and that really...
or your head.
Yeah, I know, right. This is just going well for you, Greg. But I always find when you lead people to doubt your word,
right,
that's only going to get worse.
Look, it was 4 months that this meeting occurred before the American public knew anything officially about
and nothing we could say it looks like anyone was coordinating or hacking polls or any of the stuff that would have changed the outcome.
And let me say, by the way, that if the Russian lawyer came to the Trump team and said, here's hacked emails from Hillary Clinton and the DNC, do with it as you may, and they took it and used it, that would be trafficking in stolen goods, and that is a crime. But there's no evidence that happened.
Flip it around. Is there a crime? And remember the charge about Hillary Clinton that she was given the questions in advance at a debate. She obviously took those questions, or her team did, and they didn't put a flare-up to alert anyone to that fact.
Yeah, no, that's not a crime.
That's not a crime.
It's stupid, and it's cheating, and it looks bad, and maybe that was one of the many things that contributed to her presidential loss.
Wow. All right, you're a cruel lawyer. All right.